Good morning, or maybe it's good evening, or I don't know, when do you listen to podcasts? For me, it's morning, however, as I'm recording this, and I am full of energy. And I actually had a little moment. I'm currently in Italy with my family, where I was thinking, oh, you have a lot of work this week. And then I thought, but how wonderful is it that my work means I get to do things like recording podcasts, outlining coaching sessions, talking to clients. It's just a wonderful feeling to, do a job you love so much and you get paid well for. I think online, a lot of people talk about, making money and the millions and all of that and the 100K and blah, blah, blah. And it's all important. Money matters, but I think we don't talk about, just like simply really enjoying what you do enough. So that's how I reframed my early morning, because this morning I started podcasting early. I'm in a house with my family in Italy, remote working, all of us, me and my brothers, and spending some time together. And I knew I had a lot of work today, but I decided to reframe it as being so grateful that this is the work I get to do.
Hello, and welcome to Fail to Win, a show where we love to make mistakes and learn from them so you can turn your passion into profits and live life on your own terms. I'm Amy van der Putten from FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode with simple strategies every Tuesday.
Energy and motivation is also what I want to talk about today in this podcast episode, because I know it is not always easy, especially in January, February, March. A lot of people get a lot demotivated, a little demotivated, or a lot, I don't know, and start really feeling the heaviness of their business weighing on them. So today I want to talk to you about how can we make sure, or how do I do this, and how have I learned this over the years, that we keep our energy and motivation high, not just on Monday, but also all throughout the week, so that you can end the week on a high on Friday as well. Let's dive in. I used to not be good at this. About 10 years ago, when I started working, as a small business owner, I used to be fully exhausted by the end of the week. I've talked about this a lot, but by the end of the week, I would have done so much for clients that I was exhausted. And the only way to kind of like soothe myself would be to eat a lot, drink a lot, and that felt like it was really grounding to me. Overeating and drinking, stuff like that, were like, oh, now I get to relax. And I don't mean drinking myself into oblivion, but just like, oh, the glass of wine, or oh, the cookies, and maybe also some of the potato chips. And it often felt like either I was working hard or I was enjoying hard, which there's nothing wrong with that unless you are harming yourself. And in hindsight, I was harming my body in the way that I was just exhausting it too much and not giving it enough of what I needed. So what happened back then is I started working with a coach because I knew I wasn't taking good enough care of myself. And she taught me about how to self-care for myself as an entrepreneur. And to this day, 10 years later, I'm still trying to apply these lessons, still learning every single week what I can do better, how can I increase my energy, all of it. And I recently actually had a health checkup. And some things I still need to work on, because I think our hormones and our health it's a never-ending story. But what also happened is that the woman who did the measurements or the tests, she said oh, I'm actually surprised for how busy you are, that some of your stats are really pretty good, and compared to how much stress you're under and how much responsibility you carry. And I said, well, that's nice to see, because I actually also really work on this. I carry the R ring, I work on my sleep, all of that stuff. But today I want to talk to you about how can you make sure that your energy stays high all throughout the week, which would eventually reflect in stats like an R ring, health stats, obviously, because being stressed the fuck out all the time will decrease your motivation, decrease your energy, annihilate your sex drive. And after a while, it might lead to kind of like a burnout. And that is something I didn't want for myself, and I don't want for my clients or my listeners, which is why I want to talk about it. And today I'm just going to share about 5-ish things I do to keep my energy and motivation high all throughout the week. So the first thing I do is I have installed theme days into my weeks. And if you've listened to my podcast over the years, You've heard me talk about this a lot. They have changed a lot throughout the years. Every quarter or so, I have a look at my calendar and I revisit my ideal week. And so what happened is also recently I started doing more marketing things on Wednesdays. But for example, for me, Tuesdays are strategy days and I have team strategy meetings. On Thursdays, I have coaching calls. And because I do it that way, I don't have to switch between contexts the entire time. And this might be something for you to look at as well, because when you are time blocking, working with theme days, it's nice because your brain gets to go in one spot, which is really difficult when it's not like that. So for example, for me yesterday, I had a little bit of a day where it was not possible to just stick to certain types of focus for a full day. And what happened is I was busy with finance stuff, then with my accountant, then I had a team interview, then I had to do creative work, and it was just so incredibly difficult, one, to get everything done, two, to switch between those things. And I wasn't able to focus on the creative work until, the busy financial fiscal work was done. Now, normally this wouldn't happen to my calendar and my to-do list, but I'd been sick last week for 2 days because of food poisoning. I've been traveling a lot and a couple of things just came together, and yesterday was just a shit show. And it also reaffirmed why I usually don't plan like that and why I love my team days. And the way you can look at it is when you are working, you're kind of like working on an island. If you're working within one theme or topic, which could be coaching, content, finances, operations, whatever. But when you have to switch between topics like I had to do yesterday, then you have to kind of like, you're on an island, you have to walk over a bridge, but you're holding a lot of shit. And then you're walking over the bridge, over the water, and you might drop something. You're like, oh no, I don't have time to go and pick it up because I have to get to the next island. Then you get to the next island, you have to unpack all of your stuff. You have to think, okay, what do I need to do on this island? Oh, this task. Okay. And then after that, you have to walk over another bridge to another island. And then again, on the bridge, you might lose something. You might have forgotten something on the previous island. You have to run back. And so at the end of the day, you're on an island. You're like, how did I even get here? And what do I do? Right? So what we want to look at is it makes much more sense to arrive on an island in the morning and be like, okay, I'm packing all of my stuff, doing all of the things I need to do here. And maybe the afternoon I walk over the bridge to another island. That's kind of like what time blocking, batching, and working in theme days actually means. So for me, it means differentiating between marketing and content creation, or development of coaching calls and programs, or sales things, or team finance stuff. Really identifying for you what are the themes that I work in. Maybe you have physical products, you have a lot of other topics that you work on, but really looking at how can I make these theme days fit my week. So that's one thing. The second thing I have been doing religiously since that moment of coaching a couple of years ago is I became really aware of my energy. And so what that means is I used to work until I was just exhausted every day. If I had energy left and I was feeling good, I was like, oh, amazing. That means I get to work more. By the way, if you hear a lot of noises in the background, that's, I know, my mom or my brothers, because we're all in a house together and there's a lot of noise. But so what I used to do is I would work until I couldn't anymore. And if I had energy left, I would still squeeze it out of me. And I was like, oh, then that means I can work on this idea, or I can work on my website, or I can go into Canva. But it would mean that by the end of the day, I would always go over my boundaries. And then you pay for that the next morning because you're feeling really good and amped up on adrenaline at night. But the next morning, your alarm clock goes off. You're like, oh no, I'd rather snooze. Or maybe you could do this for a week, and then the next week you're having a really shitty, demotivated, low energy week because you've kind of gone overboard and you've used up all of your energy. So what I started doing is I started tracking my energy at the end of the day and started looking at how am I ending my day? Am I ending my day on a high? Do I have energy left? And I started learning that it was okay to finish my day, finish my work day, not being fully exhausted. And it was also okay to go to sleep, Not necessarily being super, super sleepy, but that you can also just go to sleep when you need to go to sleep. And what helped me is that sometimes I saw an 8-hour workday is not the same as a different 8-hour workday. When I'm recording podcasts and I'm doing coaching calls and I'm strategizing and brainstorming, I am so happy and high energy at the end of the day. When I'm working on the finance stuff and I'm doing HR things, I'm not so happy at the end of the day. It's just not stuff that gives me a lot of energy. So this really taught me what not just my zone of genius is, but also my high energy activities and how I got to structure my week more like that. Now, I created a printable and something I teach my clients whenever they are feeling overwhelmed or low energy to print out. And for 1 week, they use this, and every day at the end of the day, they score their energy, and then they look at a little debrief of what their day was like how did it go, what went well, what could have gone better, what do they need for tomorrow's success. If you do that for just 1 week, it is going to help you. So if you want access to it, I'll gift it to you for free. Normally it's part of my coaching curriculum, but I'll gift it to you. All you need to do is click on the link in the description or just DM me the word energy sheet on Instagram and I will send it over. So there's that. Then let me look at, so we have 1 theme days. Think of the islands and the bridges. Then we have tracking the energy and, trying to stay high energy, obviously. Next, let me look at my lists. Having a fairly realistic daily plan also really helps me. So obviously this coincides with the first thing I mentioned, but having targets for my day, for example, today I know, need to finish the podcast. That's one thing. Have coaching calls, have team calls. That's it. I know there's not a whole lot else I can do in a day. But a lot of people just have so many tasks and want to do so many different types of things in one day that it just becomes impossible. So what I usually do is I'll do a lot of operational stuff at the end of the week. But during my normal work days, I don't have a ton of tasks. And when I do have them, it would be like, record the podcasts, for example, or record reels, or do the coaching calls. I don't have a million different things I'm doing every single day. And as I said, that kind of goes alongside the first thing I mentioned, but I think the key word here is realistic. If you look at your task list and then you look at your calendar and you can't fit all of your tasks into that day, then it's just not going to work out and you're going to be severely demotivated because it will feel like you could never actually hit the mark. You're never actually winning, which is really demotivating. The fourth thing I do, and I really don't think a lot of entrepreneurs do this, or not enough people do this enough, is planning in some time for myself. And this could be recovering after an event. And so planning in recovery time. I'm fairly introverted, highly sensitive. So I just need some introverted time to recharge. I look at a day as having 3 parts, morning, afternoon, evening. And I've noticed that if I'm social, all 3 day parts, I get sad and grumpy. I need one of 3 day parts to be by myself, a minimum. Ideally 2. So an ideal day for me would be working by myself all day on strategy and content, and then at night doing something with family and friends, or doing coaching all day long, and then at night just chilling by myself or with my partner. But consciously planning in time for myself, be that by working out or going for a walk midday or having a bath or planning in a really cozy date night or a self-care night. Those are things that I plan into my calendar because I know I need them to recharge and to also kind of come down from the high adrenaline work I do. So I plan in a lot of massages, sometimes twice a week, because I just know that planning in that self-care and that me time actually allows me to do the work I do because it is so intense and I give so much to other people. I really need to fill my own cup. These are just some examples of what I do, but I think it's just about not only taking care of your work, but taking care of you as your most valuable employee in your business, is what I would say. And then last but not least, I had one more tip, and this is something I see happening to a lot of my clients, a lot of people online, is they feel like they're always behind. They feel like they're never winning. and they get really, really demotivated by the end of the week. And what I've identified is that this often has to do with either too many or a lack of clear goals. Because let's say I look at my week and I think, oh, I want to rebrand, but I also need to be running ads on a new funnel. Oh, I should set up that new funnel. I'm working on that new course. Oh, I should get some sales from my Millionaire Mastermind. Oh my God, I still need to make some new content. And I have so many to-dos and targets in my head that I'm going to feel like I'm never actually winning. So what I do instead is I set 3 clear targets per week. So for example, this week I'm prepping for a retreat that next week I want to be really successful. This week I'm also selling spots for that retreat and my flagship program, and I'm working on getting some new mastermind clients in. Those are my targets. I know exactly how many clients I want, what I want the conversion rate of my retreat to be, how many clients I want in my mastermind. So I know for this week, for example, it's week 11. I know, okay, going for 3 clients, 20 sales, perfectly prepped retreat so that next week it converts at 20% re-signups, for example. On that list, it doesn't say get 10 passive sales in or get the ads target to that, blah, blah, blah. And why I do this is not because the ads aren't important or the passive sales aren't important, but because I can't have 10 different targets each week, because then I will constantly be losing. And the good thing is when you choose what your wins are, when you choose, okay, when I accomplish this, I'm winning, it also means that you are choosing what your wins are not. So this week, I don't need to be focused on the ads, for example, new ads, or I don't need to rebrand this week. It would be good for my business if we can work on the branding, but it's not a priority this week. And because I don't set it as a target and I do know what my targets are, I know when I'm winning and losing. And so the mistake most people make is they have too many targets that aren't clear. And what I would recommend to you is at the beginning of the week, you set 3 clear outcome-oriented targets. And during the week, you work on hitting those targets as much as possible. You can also do this for a month, for a quarter. You can do this every day, whatever floats your boat. I do this per week, so I know what my focus per week is. And it helps me tremendously because it also makes me feel like I can win. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs who can just never win because they want too much and not enough at the same time. So set 3 clear goals and also decide what it's not this week and cut yourself some slack, okay? So we had working in theme days, tracking our energy and doing as much high energy activities as we can, having a realistic daily plan with tasks, planning in some you time, and for example, that could also be workouts during the day. And last but not least, having clear targets for your week so that you can actually win instead of constantly feeling like you are behind, okay? Go and implement these. Be really critical to yourself. Know that this never stops. We have to keep on learning from, what works and what doesn't work. And don't forget to grab your energy sheet. I've linked it in the description of this episode, or simply DM me on Instagram with the word energy sheet, all one word, and I'll send it over. Bye. You want to make money on Instagram, but you're not exactly sure what you actually need in order to make that happen. Chances are you're creating content and you're trying different things, but it seems to not really click together and you're wondering why those other people are getting in all of those sales, but you aren't. Well, in reality, even if you're only selling for 30 euros every day, that's an extra 1,000 a month if you can make it work. But so many people actually can't because they don't see the full picture and they are missing one key element. That's why I've made the Instagram income map for my clients, which is a PDF workbook that you can go through in 1 hour. You'll discover the 8 building blocks that determine whether you just attract clients on Instagram or just talk about sales, or that you can actually go from attracting clients to getting in sales every single day. And I want that for you. So you can go and grab the workbook now, available for only 27 euros for a limited time. Go to FastForwardAmy.com/income map and I'll send it over to you instantly, or click the link in the description of this episode.